Well, good evening. Welcome to Thursday Night Interviews with CMJ. Tonight's guest is a man of many talents. He's a man with a mission and a ministry. He runs conferences, is a speaker, and has written about 30 books or thereabouts. He's also a freelance software designer and computer programmer. A Jewish man brought up in a traditional, but in the main, a non-religious household. I first met him years ago, before 2001. But in 2001, my husband and I joined him on a tour of the Jewish East End of London, which was an absolutely riveting tour and never to be forgotten experience. He's attended the CMJ conferences sometimes, and I think actually he's known by many of you. So I would like you to welcome Steve Maltz this evening. Steve, welcome to tonight. I think you have more hours in. You have more hours in the day than most of us, I think.
Well, I think I've cloned myself a few times, so yeah, that's the answer. I think.
I wondered actually if we'd met at a Ginny White meeting years ago before we did the tour. Did you ever go to her?
I've been up to Sheffield a few times. I think we may be talking about those. Yeah, I've been three or four times, I think.
I think we must have first met you there because by the time we did the tour, we certainly knew you, but it was a fantastic tour. Now, Jewish people, when they read the New Testament, always say it's a Jewish book. And partly it's because there's a genealogy at the beginning. And so I really have to start with some of your family background. And I think here we've got a picture of you with your mother. I'm tapping the next button frantically here.
Sure.
There. So your mum looks absolutely ecstatic to have you. And it's the most brilliant picture.
Well, I was with her today. She's not so ecstatic about me, but she's 90 years old now, and she's matured quite a bit. And looking at that picture, I had what was called a Polish head, which meant is a very wide head. So I think it might have caused a few problems. But the doctor said that, like Winston Churchill, it'll mean I'll grow up to be very clever.
Oh, that's pretty good then. So your mum, though, what was her background? Because, I mean, I don't know how many generations you've been in England.
Right. I think two or three generations are in England. My great grandparents came from Eastern Europe or Poland. My grandfather on my father's side came over from Poland himself, and but my parents were born in London, and I was born in London as well.
But you don't lose that ethnicity, do you, really, that Polish touch? On this next slide, when I can get it, there's a picture of you as a little boy looking so cute and innocent. Were you so cute and innocent?
I've always been cute and innocent. There's no answer to that.
I think I read in your book, because you have this amazing book, My Son the Christian, and in reading this, not only have I learned about your mum, I've learned about you. And your mum said she was a rather sort of scamp as a youngster, and then you admitted that you also had been, and that you preferred Bunsen burners to the local film stars. Is that true?
Yeah, I was always an outsider. I preferred my own company. My parents were they came out of the war and were part of this generation who were very much hedonistic. So they had lots of parties in the 60s and a lot of fun. And I think while they're having the fun, they sort of neglected me, which I was quite happy to just stay in my room and, you know, do things with chemistry sets and electronics and stuff. You know.
So, but that would suggest you were an only child, but you weren't, were you?
No, my sister came 5 years later. She was, let's say, more of a normal child. I mean, she mixed better, and she wasn't the outsider like me. So, and she's grown up to be. She's now a social worker, so she's a real people person.
So I'm trying to get the next slide on. This is going to be a slide with your grandmother. Which grandmother is this one then?
Right, that's my mother's mother. That's Nana Lily, who died in the 1990s. Yeah, I had a great. I think you have great relationships with your grandparents. Sometimes you tend to skip a generation. I didn't really. I think my mum and dad didn't really get me, but my Nana Lily was probably my best friend in the family.
So where were you all living at this time?
Funnily enough, living where I'm living now, more or less. I was brought up in Ilford, Redbridge. My parents are still in the same house. Sort of 60 years later, still in the same house, and I've just moved 5-10 minutes away.
That's pretty good. So was she religious, your grandma? Did they keep a Jewish household?
No. My family, when they were in the East End, in the the generations in the 30s and the 40s, they were probably more religious then in terms of the food and turning up and going to synagogue and maybe doing the Sabbath and things like that. But as soon as they moved out to Redbridge, they became more and more secular. My parents were very secular. We did very little in a Jewish sense, apart from the food. The food, is still there.
Food is very important. I'm trying to get this photograph to change. I'm sorry, this clicker isn't working. So here, though, I thought when I saw this, it was a wedding. What's happening here?
This is, as your people will know, when you're 13, you have a bar mitzvah. You come into the law. You become a son of the law, and there's me absolutely hating every moment of it. There's a long story. If you have to get the book to get the whole story, but for me to be in public at the age of 13 was not a good thing.
And I believe, though, that you'd had some training, hadn't you, beforehand?
Yeah. My mum and dad wanted me not to let them down. So rather than go to what was the Saturday school, the equivalent of the Christian Sunday school, rather than do that, I had a private rabbi, Rabbi Jacobs, for 2 or 3 years. And his sole job was to prepare me for my bar mitzvah. Nothing else. That's all he did. So I was word perfect when the day came,
What? So what was it you had to learn? You were learning Deuteronomy 12?
Something like that. Not just to say it, but you have to sing it,
Oh.
So you have to get all the intonations right. Oh, yeah. And it's, that was my Judaism. That was my religious experience as I grew up. Not the best background, really.
It's a brilliant picture there. I suppose, do you think it's a bit like Church of England confirmation for children of about 13 or 14, take a confirmation of the vows made over their baptism? Is it similar to that in a way?
It's similar, except it's more cultural than religious, and it's mostly about people giving me money. Basically, a lot of money changed hands, and lots of eating. Yeah, over like 6-course meal there. It's ridiculous.
Not about food, so we just need the next slide. So this is a bit different, and I think that's quite a snazzy blouse you're wearing there. Shirt is a psychedelic shirt, which rather sets you in. What period of time was that then?
Yeah, right. That would have been probably about 1971. So I came in at the end of the hippie boom, into all that, the music and the flares and the tie-dye shirts. I think that was in Ibiza. Yeah, a family holiday. Yeah.
Was that before or after university? Before.
I was Yeah, I was
Yeah.
16. Yeah, that was the only holiday abroad that I went with my parents. I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and this next slide that we're going to have shows you with a degree. Now, I just hope that the people watching can guess what the degree is by looking at the picture. It's also a clue to Steve's note paper newsletter.
Like with I can see the clue.
Yeah, you've got it now.
I've only just seen it. Yeah, so it's a chemistry degree. That was salt. I can see, and what you can't see is what was going on in my mind, which was it was the hottest day of the year, the hottest day of the century, I believe, in 1976, and I was wearing black, and it was horrible, and I had lots of emotional turmoil at the time. So and my shirt was hanging out. That's the only thing my dad remembers, that my shirt was hanging out.
You can't see it though.
You can't see it, no.
You've got a great big gown on, Steve. We can't see that. So where did you do your chemistry degree? Where was it?
Reading University.
Reading. Yeah. And did you do anything to do with chemistry after?
No. It was a means to an end. I had an interest when I was a kid, and it just took me through to university. It was a means to an end, just to get a degree. I had no idea what I wanted to be at that stage. You know.
What did you do then, in fact, when you started?
Well, I took a gap year, went to, there you go, that came afterwards. I had a gap year, went to Israel, worked on the kibbutz in Israel, came back still aimless, looked into working in marketing, but in the end I worked in corporate planning, systems analysis, a lot of mathematical stuff I was doing. And I met my wife, Monica, there you see a picture, while we were both working at a paint company, Berger Paints in Berkeley Square, where I was on the 6th floor, she was on the 1st floor, and I think we met in the lift. So, but, you know.
Sounds like the story for a book, Steve. You met in the lift. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and neither of you were Christians at the time?
She was further along in the journey, but it was quite clear that we were both on a spiritual quest and coming together in marriage, even though her background was very different. She was like a German Catholic, and I was an English Jew. Not the obvious connection there, but what kept us together was our journey to Jesus, you know, to discover a deeper walk. You know.
That's a lovely picture. But then here we have your birth family, your sister, I believe. Who's that?
Yeah, that's Michelle. Michelle's now, she's looking pretty good actually. 61 there, you know. I don't
think she really wanted you to tell everybody else.
She doesn't look that good in real life. I don't. And that's my mum and dad. Literally last week, my mum's 90, my dad's 95, and they're hanging on.
Wow.
Let's say.
Hanging on. They don't look as if they're hanging on. They look as if they're thriving.
Well, no, you see them on a bad day, and that's for the camera.
See any of us on a bad day, Steve. Oh no, I think that looks fantastic. They look great. And sorry about this. This is a picture with all of your family. So you must have had 3 children.
3 children. 3 boys are there. The one at the back is Phil. He's 40 now. He works for Premier Radio. He's their video man, and he does all the clever stuff. Simon's the next one. He's on the left with dark glasses on. He works for the Trussell Trust, you know, the food bank. He's their social media manager. And on the right, Johnny, some of your people might know, runs a theatre company. He's about to turn 30, and he's touring the country doing a theatre production on the persecuted church. And all the ladies are their ladies, and the 2 boys at the front are Phil's sons, my grandsons.
Oh, so hang on, the one with the mustard coloured jumper and the sunglasses.
Yeah, that's
He's
Simon.
he's
He's middle
Simon.
one.
Well, when
Yeah.
I looked at this before I knew who was who, I saw two boys that looked just like their father, and I saw a girl who I thought looked like Monica, your wife. And that would be Simon's wife, don't you think?
None of the girls are related to us. So,
no, well, I see that.
yeah, I know what you mean. I can see Simon's
Okay.
girlfriend on the left. It does look a bit like Monica in that picture. Yeah.
It's a great family picture, though.
Yeah, that's Lizzie. That's Lizzie, and Ruth is in the middle. That's Phil's wife with her arms. Sort of in front of him. And on the far right is Johnny's wife, Kat. They've just got married. They had a COVID wedding last year.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Great family. Okay, so we'll just have another picture now. I had to go back to your mum because I noticed in the background of one of the pictures that we just saw this incredible painting.
Yeah.
And I asked you, didn't I? Who did it?
Yeah. She's done loads. At one point, we made
your mum.
Greetings
your mum
cards.
Did them.
Yeah, my mum. Yeah, on the left there. She can still paint. She's still doing it, but her paintings now are of doom and despair. It's all about all she's painting is things to do with the COVID and being locked in and all this stuff. So she hasn't completed any recently. But in her heyday, that was she calls that the yeshiva. So that's a yeshiva with obviously Orthodox Jews.
Fabulous.
It is, and it looks even better in real life. And,
yeah. I mean, I'd have that on my wall straight off. Similar, a copy. Yeah. So, and also I've put a little copyright at the bottom of every picture.
Oh yeah,
so
well done.
We'll just have a look at another couple. So this is sort of stylistic, isn't it? What's going on there?
That's interesting because they're flashbacks to her career. She was a fashion designer, so you can sort of see that in the design of these pictures. That was her sort of middle period before she became a believer. But since she's become a believer, the motives are very, very Jewish and also very sort of spiritual. And you might have one or two others, of the more sort of Jewish or spiritual ones, but this is her middle period, her stylistic period. Yeah.
Do you know what's going on in the right hand as I'm looking at it picture? What's going on there? Do you know?
What, the two ladies?
No, the other one, the one that's.
Oh, right. Actually, that could actually be my sister when she was a rebel and she went up north to sort of find herself. So that might actually be her in a sense.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well, there's a couple more of these pictures coming up. Just look at that. Oh. That's just brilliant.
All right. I don't recollect that one.
The same. It's at the bottom of the one above.
Yeah.
So she's really got some talent.
The one above you can see is a Jewish one. It's a matzah being broken apart, and that's probably in some sort of Jewish celebration with food. Food is a great motif in her pictures. It's the Last Supper. Sorry, that was the last fantastic picture.
I mean, really that is
Yeah.
When did she do that?
When she dies, I'm getting that one. That's the one that we claimed.
Maybe she'll give you a copy before. So
we've got photographic copies, but the original is hanging up in her lounge. But that's Jesus and the disciples in the Last Supper. And
as you've never seen it before. Yeah, it is absolutely brilliant. Did you say you had some cards made?
Oh, yeah.
Have you still got them?
I think there might be some around that they call them kosher cards. And there was a little business going, but then I think my son lost interest and because he was doing the printing, but we probably got some lying around somewhere.
Can we persuade him to print some more? Perhaps that would be very good.
Possibly, if there's thousands of requests, I'm sure he will comply.
Oh, well, yes, we'll have to write in, won't we? Next picture. Next one is the book.
There we go.
So
the book.
I think I've put 1987, but I wish I'd put 1986 because you became a believer on the 26th of August in 1986.
Oh, right.
According to your book.
Okay. Oh, right.
You can't have forgotten. Please don't
Then I
forget.
must have done that. The story behind this is that we wrote it together. My mother and I wrote this together in about mid 1990s, about 1995 or 6. There was the Christian publishing world weren't very pro-Jewish at that time, and they basically rejected it. And I left it on my computer, and I discovered it a year ago. As I was playing, looking at my files on my computer, I found it, and it was intact. And I basically got it printed last year, and it came out last year. So it says 1987, but it was actually published last year. And it's the whole story. That's a Passover meal, as you can see. I imagine that boy might have been me. Doing the 4 questions, but that book, which is on sale now, and people are reading it and getting the story that you're coaxing out of me at the moment.
Do you? I mean, the thing that struck me reading that is, once again, you have a Jewish family who are not religious in that sense, but are traditional. And it's so deeply rooted that when the possibility of Christianity comes along, it's kind of like, oh, we're not allowed to do this, even though they're not actually believing in God. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, it's the only religious thing we did as I was growing up was a Passover every year. My dad always conducted it in Hebrew. He knew Hebrew, totally. Did not understand a word that he was saying. He knows the Hebrew, and he used to go on and on and on. In the end, we got him to cut it down so that we can get to the food quicker. But I was brought up with these Passovers, and when I became a believer, and my mum became a believer, we carried on with them, and we added a Jesus element. And I don't think my dad noticed because he wasn't a believer. But we started introducing a messianic element to it with these family Passovers. But unfortunately, we've stopped doing them. But we always enjoyed doing them because, as you know, the Passover is so evocative and points so much towards the Messiah. It's amazing. So.
It is. Throughout the book, you are sort of detailing the story, the gradual dawning of the truth of who the Messiah is in both yourself and your mum in her story too.
Yeah,
it's just brilliant the way that it comes.
It came differently with me. It came through a Gentile way, in that I was always brought up with Gentiles. I didn't have Jewish friends really growing up. And at university, I was introduced to Jesus through a Christian girl, and it was always the Gentile thing. It wasn't Jewish. But my mum, when I find that, and this is the story here, Monica, my wife, and I had to tell my mum at some point that we were Christians. We couldn't hold it back. So I took my mum out for a walk, and basically looked at her and said, Mum, I've become a Christian. And that was her. And the title of that book is My Son, the Christian. It was a typical Jewish response. But at that time, I challenged her. I challenged her to look into it. And she did. And she came through very quickly. But in her case, it had to be in a Jewish context. So her understanding was always in a Jewish context. So in terms of the messianic fellowships that she started, basically, the Tree of Life, which is still going strong, but it started off in her house about 30 years ago.
Wow. Gosh. Yeah, I know that you challenged her to ask God for something. You told her, pray about something and ask him something, and in a week he will answer. That was quite do you remember that?
Yeah, well, I'm not the sort of person to get words of knowledge, but that was a definite word I had. And I was bold enough to say it to her, because if I was wrong, that could have stopped her in her tracks, But something very big happened to her, which involved my dad going to hospital, funnily enough. And
that was the second prayer.
Yeah, my dad was always the victim in all my mum's prayers, I'm afraid. But it resulted in something in my mum's mind, something so big that it made her sit up and notice God. There must be a God for this to happen, and she went on from there. Yeah. And
he basically was taken out of the picture, so she was free to go to a different church. I don't really. Yeah. Anyway, you have to read the book to find out exactly what it was. That's a good reason to get the book. Yeah. So let's have a look at this next picture, because, well, just before we do, just tell me. Oh, that's it. You've got it. Thanks. Yeah. Tell me, as you became a believer, why salt shakers? I mean, it goes back to your chemistry degree, okay? But, what was it? What's it about?
Yeah, it's very hard to remember. It was in the early 90s to mid 90s, and I knew I was starting a ministry. I wasn't sure what it was. I was writing software, computer software, a religious computer software, and got quite well known for it, and needed to find a name. And it was just literally the salt of the earth, salt shakers. And when I registered it with the internet, it was the early days. So I managed to get the domain name, saltshakers.com, which you would never get a domain name like that anymore. And it went from there. It's just literally the salt of the earth. It wasn't a Jewish thing. It was just the salt of the earth. A place for those looking for a clear biblical voice in a world of many voices. And it became a website.
Just a biblical, nothing to do with Hebraic roots then?
It did, but then it got into that, because what I haven't told you yet is that when I became a believer, I had a clear mandate from God to turn back to my Jewish background, something I had rejected throughout my teenage years since my bar mitzvah, and at university I'd rejected it. When I became a believer, it became very, very apparent that my mandate was to look into the Hebraic background in terms of teaching the church, and not Jewish evangelism. I've never been called into that, but actually training up the church. At that time, it was unheard of. The Hebraic roots were in the 90s, were no one knew what it was at all, and so our website was one of the first in the world, based on Ephesians 2, the one new man. And it was a very basic website, but it's been there ever since. It's been a continuous web presence for about 25 years. And it's still
Did you
going
used to
now.
do physical newspapers at the beginning, physical papers, Salt Shaker, and post them?
No, that must have been someone else. That could have been another.
There's only one.
It wasn't us.
No, yeah. Only you, I think. Yeah, no, that's really great. But eventually it became clear to you that there was something amiss in the church. Both your mum, in her story, it comes out perhaps even stronger, but in yours too. And you start thinking and changing for something that, well, I'm going to show the title of your book here, if I can. Yeah. Yep. Hebraic Church. So what led to this then? What's been going on here?
Well, there's a big gap between my beginning of my writing career and in this book here. This was like, I wrote Hebraic Church in, I think, 2016. And for me, it was a revelation from God. I actually remember being woken up in the middle of the night and having the words Hebraic Church came into my head, because I felt the church was here, the Jewish side was there, and they weren't meeting. The one new man wasn't being fulfilled. And so I wanted a title of not just the book, but a ministry and the conferences that somehow brought the two together. So having the word Hebraic and church together, in a sense, makes both sides quite angry. and it has done. I've had those on the Gentile side, saying, what's the church got to do with Hebrew and Hebraic and Jewish stuff? And so it was purposely
asking your
purposely provocative. Yeah, purposely provocative. But from there, the whole essence of what we teach, and it's not just me, it's those who are now part of our ministry, is to be Hebraic is not to suddenly become Jewish. It's not suddenly to put on a kippah and wear a talit and all this stuff and speak Yiddish. It's to think in the way that Jesus would have thought, the mindset, thinking differently of Jesus, the first apostles, the biblical Jews at the time, thought very differently to how we think now. And so that's all our teaching is going back to how to think, how to get away from the Greek thought structures that we've been stuck with.
Yes, the thing is, in those early days, I think we used to dance around with flags, and you're right, the men would wear kippahs, and some people would have accused them of playing at being Jewish, and they perhaps had a point, but nobody actually thought they were playing. Everyone thought they were doing a Jewish thing, didn't they? But it's much, much deeper than that, isn't it?
It is, and I'm not speaking against those that have done what you're saying, because when you've got the zeal, that's how you express it. But I'm always looking at the wider church. I'm looking at those in the Church of England, the liberal church, who are very negative about anything Jewish. I want to show them that being Hebraic is the normal Christian life. It's not an added extra. It's not a Jewish thing. We see so many people liberated coming to our conferences and reading the books because they're starting to think and act like Jesus, and and that's what it's about. Becoming more like Jesus. That's our mandate. But of course there is an Israeli element. We are pro-Israel. We teach messianic things and whatever, but we're not messianic in the normal sense. But we're trying to attract those from outside, and that's how we're doing it, or trying to do it, is to seem normal. So, we are normal.
So after we've watched this next piece, I want to come back to the Hebraic church, because I'm just wondering if church as a whole should be changing and what you think about that. But this is going to be now a little video that is sent as a message to you and to all of us from Jerusalem.
Ooh.
Hello, I'm Rosemary Saunders. I'm standing here right in the centre of Jerusalem in the Anglican International School, which is owned by the Church's Ministry amongst Jewish people. It's an incredible school right in the centre of Jerusalem, and I'm the director here. In fact, God called me to be the director here, which is rather exciting, in 2016. Prior to that, I attended, I think, 2 conferences that Steve organised called the Foundation Conferences. I have to say that they were memorable. I was speaking to my husband about them last night, and he says he just remembers the fellowship and the worship was so memorable. For me, what was memorable is the creative side of it. We weren't just expected to come into this conference and sit down and listen to all the teaching and absorb it all. No, we were expected to be part of it. It was a hands-on conference. I won't go into all the workshops of the hands-on. I went to some of them, and I have to say each one made an impact upon my life. But the one in particular I want to point out was the teaching on the 23rd Psalm. I remember the teacher who led that, he said, we're not going to sit here and I'm going to teach you about the 23rd Psalm. Let's go outside, let's walk by some water, let's go out into God's creation. Now let's teach about the 23rd Psalm. And during that time, as we walked through a field and we looked at the water, I felt the Lord speak to me. I felt that the whole conference was more conducive to hearing from the Lord because of the atmosphere that Steve and his team created. I'm looking forward when we come back to attending another Foundations conference, and also I want to thank you, Steve, for all that you did to organise these, and thank you, Steve, for your books. They are so readable, so readable. I've learned such a lot, and I'm very grateful for you, Steve. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak on behalf of the Foundation Conference. It's my honour and pleasure. Thank you.
Wow. That was unexpected.
I know.
Yes. I met Rosemary again 2 years ago, just before lockdown in Israel, and she was, there was this real tension in the air, because it was literally the year 2020 in March, the end of February, beginning of March, and we had a great little time. We only spoke for about 10 minutes, but there's a real connection that we had, and looking forward to her coming back. But in terms of creativity, we major on that now. We if anything, we're making the conferences even more creative. But if there's any time, I'll talk to you about it a bit later. But
yeah, well, we'll go back to the old homeland. I was going to ask you, when you first went and how often you've been, but you've just begun to answer that. What?
Yeah, I've been trying over the last few years to go every year for a long weekend, where the Lord helps me in the writing of the book. So one good example was about 4 years ago. I went there by myself, no one else, just for a weekend, and I got loads of the ideas that ended up in my book Shalom, which is starting to make an impact, this book. And a lot of stuff there, actually, the green one, a lot of, and when you read it, you see a lot of them are my adventures in Israel. A lot of information there, and it always means a lot. And I feel like, as many of you do, when are we going back? When can we go back? Hoping this year maybe. But and
of course Roy and Rosemary are coming home after 6 years this July, so they're going to be back in this homeland. So let's go back to the title, actually. Elias, if we could just go back to the title before we show everybody Steve with his blue cap on, and the title of the foundations. Just back another one. Yeah, thank you, because you were going to talk about this and I want to hear it.
Right. I'm going to have an opportunity now to say something I have never said before, because I was going to launch it tomorrow. But our next conference, which will be our 16th one, in fact, it's about our 23rd, but it's going to be totally about discovering our creative gifts. A whole weekend of no teaching, nothing structured, but based on people being creative and looking at our culture Hebraically, using the tools that we've learned, and looking at situations like, why is the church so ineffective in terms of dealing with the COVID situation and the woke agenda out there? The church seems to be fairly powerless, and we're going to bang our heads together, and we trust that the Lord is going to lead us into some creative ideas, and that, really looking forward to it. That's in March this year, and so we try to do something different every conference. But that one that Rosemary went to was the first of our really, really creative ones. That was our I've forgotten the number now. Seventh. That was our seventh conference, and we'll just keep doing them. We've done them online last year when we had to. We did 2 online, and they went down very well as well. So you can do things online like this. So,
right. It's called out and standing out, and it sounds fantastic. Is your son the one that's doing the show on the persecuted church? Does he get involved in these?
My sons over the years have been involved, less so now because they've grown up and have found their own ministries. And but one we're doing in July, and in fact 10 days after your conference in the same place at Yarnfield, we're going to be in Yarnfield doing persecuted church conference, where my son and his group will be actually performing, doing on behalf of Release International. They've got a drama about called If These Prison Walls Could Speak. So our boys do that is,
sounds fantastic. Okay, let's just move on because time is taking us away now. So if we can have the next slide then, Elias. So now the CMJ Pilgrim Fathers tour, we finished our tour with Steve's tour of the Jewish East End of London, and it was absolutely fantastic. So that's the second time I've done it. So if we just go quickly through these, it's a pity I can't control it, but so just do the next one. What's that about then, Steve?
Yeah, this one.
Oh no, sorry. Just go back to the first one.
Well, the one
go back
before,
to Bow.
I don't have much to say about it. I suppose Mary the Bow. I never go there.
To be a Cockney, Steve, to be a Cockney, you have to be born in the sound of Bow bells, don't you?
I am a true Cockney because I was actually born in Bow. You know, but that's not
where that church is. But, everything you are, yeah. Okay, let's move on.
A whole lot.
Next one, sorry, Eli. Yeah.
So yeah, the Aldgate pump on the left is the symbolic start of the East End. Basically, it doesn't work anymore. It used to be a water pump. My dad used to use it when there was real water in there, but now it's just there as a symbol of this is where the city ends and the East End starts. So it's a protected monument. And then you got the gherkin. I've no idea why you got the gherkin there.
We must have walked down that street, but I've no idea why. Anyway, next one. Yeah. Oh yeah, right. Okay, well, we know about this one.
To give you the full story would take ages, but let's say those of you who know that the Jews were kicked out of England in 1290 and were only allowed back in under Oliver Cromwell in 1656-57, and this is the first synagogue that was opened. Just a room above a pub or something like that. It was a tiny place, and obviously it doesn't exist anymore. But from that came Bevis Marks. You'll probably see in that in a minute. Bevis Marks became the first synagogue that is still standing now. In fact, the only one from that time that's still standing.
I believe you thought CMJ had a centre there under Joseph Frey, did you not? Anyway,
yeah, right, yeah. Okay, and this is the other one. So Bevis Marks and that one you just seen were the Sephardi community, but the Ashkenazi community also had a synagogue, which became like the official synagogue of the whole UK. So the rabbi of that synagogue would be seen as the chief rabbi of the UK, and one of them would be Jacobinovich. I can't remember the one that Margaret Thatcher liked. He was. I think one of the last chief rabbis at that time, but this was bombed in the war. It didn't live longer than I think 1941, and then it was bombed. But it was a big synagogue for the Ashkenazis. Here is Bevis Marks, which is still there. The picture doesn't really show it because we weren't allowed anywhere near it because they were doing construction work, and I'm not allowed in anyway. Because we looked through the gate. We looked through the gates, yeah.
Oh, never mind.
They don't like me because they
one day.
So this is Petticoat Lane Market. Used to be it's Middlesex Street basically is the actual thing, but Petticoat Lane comes from the 19th century. It used to be totally Jewish market. Now it's mostly Asian, Eastern European, African. You will very rarely find a Jewish stall there anymore. As we move north
if
from
you
there,
couldn't see the title, Steve, you see the title of the road?
Yeah, that's Frying Pan Alley. And basically fish and chips. Wow. Yeah, fish and chips was a Jewish invention. It was a mixture of the Irish, the potatoes from the Irish tradition and the fish from the Jewish tradition. Someone had the bright ideas of putting the two together, and out of that came fish and chips. And Frying Pan Alley, I imagine, was full of frying pans to make to fry the fish. So fish is a very Jewish thing, you know. We love our fish apparently. Further down that road is there's a synagogue up there, Sandys Row, that we walked past on our tour. I think your next slide will actually, that's it. So that's Sandys Road Synagogue. It's probably the only really functioning Ashkenazi synagogue in the East End. It is quite lively. It attracts city workers, young people. So it's not just old people just growing old and dying, and that's the end of it, which happened to a lot of the others. But this one, the families are quite young families, and so it's quite thriving. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to go inside, but it's beautiful. It's all in orange because it's a Dutch synagogue, so it's orange. This is the in Broome Street. This is the soup kitchen, the Jewish soup kitchen. Obviously not anymore soup kitchen. It's now a yuppie sort of a residential area. But again, during my dad and mum's time, they used to queue around the block to get their soup and bread and things like that. It kept people going. It was a real lifeline for the Jewish community, who were very poor when they came over in the 19th century. And places like that were set up by the richer Jews for the poorer Jews. That's just a nice shop that you like the look of, so you photographed it. So yeah, I don't think it has any significance.
We better move
more
quickly.
of the same.
Yeah, the one on the right, nearest, if you're looking at the one nearest your picture of mine, I thought that was a special place.
No, what
isn't
it is they weren't allowed to knock down the front. So they've had to preserve the front of that building, and the rest of the building is behind it. So I don't know if you can see that, but you can actually see there's a building behind that. But they couldn't get rid of that front because it had a preservation order again, because it is an a cultural sort of remembrance of that time, and they weren't allowed to knock it down. So it's still up there, but it has no function at all.
I thought there'd been a synagogue in the garden or something. And just quickly, just comment fast. Yeah, we'll move on.
This is on Princelet Street. It's the site of the very first Jewish theatre, Yiddish theatre. Hence the violin, which was basically burnt down, disappeared in 1888, something like that.
Oceans of talent round there, I think. Yeah, never mind. Let's move on from that because sorry, this is Brick Lane. We're running out of time.
Yeah, Brick Lane. Brick Lane, very, very Jewish area. Lots of characters used to sell their wares down there. Nothing Jewish. There might be just one Jewish shop name left. You can see it's Asian now, basically. It's called Bangalatown. They've renamed the area to reflect the Bangladeshi community. So Bangalatown is what they call it. Though the school there is still Christ Church School, which is attached to the church, Anglican Church. Again, all the kids there would be Bengalis, and maybe a few.
But they were Jewish not long ago. They would have been Jewish.
During my 30s, 40s, they would have been all Jewish, and that's the church, the parish church of the area. Been there since the 18th century, and of course this is the tablets in the foyer. Tablets preserved from the old days of CMJ when they first started. I think about a dozen tablets were found in a crypt, being ignored. Someone found them and decided that they should be displayed from Palestine Place up in Bethnal Green. And these are all displayed for anyone to see in Christchurch. It gives sort of the history of Jewish evangelism, and these two people are quite well known. You know more about them than I do.
Lewis Way, Alexander McCall.
Yeah,
we're trying to move to the next one because just quickly two more there. Aaron Stern, and then Jane Cook. She was a great giver. So okay. Then just finally inside, and then the last picture there. Yeah,
that's inside Christchurch. Yeah, very thriving church now, and that's their tour party. Outside.
That's some of the tour parties. Some were still inside, but we really appreciated your input. It was absolutely fantastic and riveting. So do you want to just do this? I'll do the sales pitch. It's not really so it's at £4 for £10 of these. They're really well worth having. Have them, give them to your friends, give them to your minister, the leader of your church especially, and that will be really good. Next slide then, please. Okay, there are some of your books, including the Shalom book, which I have here. Next slide. And some more of them. I love Flock Down. Flock Down. Yeah, it's there. And the Sinner's Charter. So next slide. Yeah, now this book. So Steve, this is, I bought this book and I was just blown away at all the first half of it because it was everything that we see happening. And you talk about life as it is now. You talk about the woke culture. What else? What's it about?
Yeah, well, when I wrote it, woke didn't exist. The name did not exist. It tells you that what we're seeing now is actually intentional. It didn't come out of nowhere. The political correct environment, the victim groups, the Me Too and cancel culture, all came from basically it's a Marxist invention, and it's provable. But of course, if you talk about this, you're accused of being a conspiracy theorist. But it's actually provable history where this comes from, because from that picture there into the lion's den, you see the lion, which is basically the devil roaring around, but also you can see the communism, the colouring and the fist, the two sort of together, and that's how the devil has been using this to basically make it harder for us to preach the gospel, by changing the culture to be one that's driven by emotionalism and by lack of intellect or anything like that, to make it very hard for people to realize that there is one truth, rather than the whole set of truths that you get from this, the culture, the Marxist culture. So it's a big subject, but that book has done very well in waking people up.
It's really worth buying. I really recommend it. So I think at this moment, I just want to go next slide where it says Salt Shakers again. That gives you the website, saltshakers.com, where you can buy any of these books. If you can't get them from there, try Amazon. But you can also find all the info that Steve and his crew put up there. It's really well worth reading. You can find out about the foundations conferences and so on. Next slide, please. I will come back to that slide in a moment, but I just want to now. So first of all, I'll thank you now. Thank you so much for coming, but I'll thank you again at the end. I just want to promote 3 or 4 different CMJ events coming up at the end of this. If you can just go through them. Thank you, Elias. So there's a CMJ day, a week on Saturday on the 22nd in Hull. If you're in Hull, look on our website and come along. Next slide. And then John Brooks with Sally Ann are going to be in Mansfield Pentecostal on the 26th, Wednesday afternoon. Next slide. And then we're having all these prayer meetings. It's fantastic. We've got the prayer breakfast coming in, as well as the once a month prayer meeting. The next once a month one will be also on the 26th. And that will be with Aaron Imey and Melody Grey Eyes, who has taken over running CMJ Canada. Then the breakfast one in the morning. Holocaust Memorial Day service at Wimborne Minster on the 29th of January. Free to please come along or watch it on live stream from Wimborne Minster. Next. The next interview that I'm doing is on the 17th of February with Jerry Mattix. Next slide. Jerry Mattix lives on Cyprus and is a worker out there, son of missionary himself. And he's also going to be teaching our CMJ UK Winter Bible Week on visions of the last days. And he's going to be looking at 3 sections of Daniel over 3 nights, the 18th, 21st and 22nd of February. I hope you'll be able to join us there. Is that the last one? I'm not sure. The Reps Conference, CMJ Reps. We're doing our conference in May now. And he's going to be teaching churches how to reach their Jewish neighbours. And we're partnering with a church in St Albans, Holy Trinity Frogmore. So if you're interested in CMJ, please contact me for that. Now, next slide. Right, so back to Steve. So we've made it in time, Steve. We've made it within the hour. And it just leaves me to say thank you so much for joining me. I've learned a tremendous amount. There's far more we could. Actually, I've just got 2 minutes for you to say about Hebraic Church. Do you think our Western churches should be more Hebraic looking?
Yeah, certainly do. What we have to do is reclaim the word so that they don't have a negative view of it. Because unfortunately, due to excesses, particularly from America, I have to say, when people think of Hebraic, they think of the more, extreme expressions of it. And we mentioned that earlier. And what we want people to see is that being Hebraic is not being Jewish, but it's thinking like the original Jews did. and the mindset of Jesus. It's so important because it's in contrast to the Greek lifestyle and the Greek philosophy that has pervaded our culture and has created a real mess in the church, if the church only knew it. And most of my books over the last 12 years, I've been building up that story. And in Hebraic Church, that book really explains it all best. So if you really need an explanation, then that's the book you should get. Hebraic Church, I think, can explain much better than I can in these 2 minutes. But the church needs it. It needs it more than ever before. You know, with what's going on in the world, it needs to be more Hebraic, definitely.
Well, thank you, Steve. I've really enjoyed having you tonight, and I know that our people watching have as well. So thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you. I've loved being here. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Jane. Blessings.